Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special meeting for House Bill 125, Repeal Gun-Free Zones and Preemption Amendments. Let me just say up front that I apologize for the lateness of the hour. It was not the finest hour upstairs in the State Senate, and for that I apologize. I hope that gets better. We're going to keep working at it. Gentlemen, thank you. Sponsor of the bill, I'm looking at you, and you've got a partner in the Senate, but take it away, walk us through House Bill 125.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Chairman Landon and committee. Thank you guys for being willing to see this at a late hour on the final day. So today I have for you House Bill 125. And as we've heard, is the repealing gun-free zones and preemptive amendments. Kind of a little bit of a background on this. When I was 21 years old, I went and got my concealed carry permit. A lot of people, when they turn 21, do other things. And for me, it was to go to the sheriff's department and do my 10 fingerprints and get that permit. And the reason for that is because one of the things that I love about our nation is the fact that our federal Constitution, the Second Amendment, says that you have the right to bear arms and it shall not be infringed. And in the Wyoming Constitution, in Article 1, Section 24, it says that you have the right to bear arms, and it, again, it shall not be infringed upon. So with that, this is kind of a conversation I feel that needs to move forward as we see that a section of our state, in my opinion, breaches that. And this is an opportunity for us to have that conversation to open up these gun-free zones. We have seen statistics, and you can get them anywhere. When I say statistics, these are government statistics come out for mass shootings, that 85% to 98%, there's a lot of different reports from a lot of different places that state that we see 85 to 98% of these mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. A majority of the shootings in America are gang related, so that's homes and neighborhoods and stuff like that, but the mass shootings is what we're talking about. So that's kind of a little bit of the background. And for the bill, we're going to dive into it, and I'll kind of walk you guys through that. One of the things you need to understand is when we brought this bill into the House, it was the first time it had ever really gotten any traction into a committee and out onto the floor. And so we put 5 amendments on this bill, working with people all over the spectrum, because I really wanted this to be a great bill, a bill that would actually meet the needs of what we're wanting to do. So to start out, I'm going to start on the page 2. It's kind of the body, and we're going to talk about 2 different sections. First section is 7 through 9 on page 2 on your green copy, and that there pretty much just states that any lawful carrying concealed weapons in Wyoming under that Wyoming Statute 6H 104, subsection A, II, and IV may carry a concealed weapon in the following places: any meeting of a government entity and any meeting of the legislature. So what that states is anyone on constitutional carry could carry in a government building. So that would be concealed carry or constitutional carry. It is not, and we'll talk about this in a later time, not allowed to be open carried. We don't want intimidation to be a part of this conversation. And obviously, we've all been here where we see people out using their First Amendment rights to tell what they feel and to show what they feel, and they may bring a long arm out in front of the Capitol. This would preclude them from being able to carry that long arm into the Capitol for intimidation's sake. Plus, it gives our law enforcement the ability where they don't have to try breach that. So then below that, starting in line 17 through 18, that is just addressing concealed carry permit holders only. And so if you look, you're going to see that below that is the public schools, the K through 12 community colleges, and the university, our educational establishments. That every individual that carries into there has to have a concealed carry permit issued by the state of Wyoming, or a state with reciprocity that gives the same. This gives us that ability to have that kind of that calling process where as a whole it's going to be 21. And we'll talk a little bit more about that for that exception if there is one, but it's 21 with a concealed carry permit. And it goes through and talks about that. On page 3, line 11 and 12, it prohibits private property. This is the section that says nothing in this section shall be construed to, and then it says that we're not going to prohibit private property owners from posting there. So if you own a restaurant, or if you own a gallery, or if you own a hardware store or whatever, and you say, you know what, I really don't want people carrying a firearm into my establishment, I can post that. We're not infringing upon private property rights here. It is your private property and you have that right. So this, if you look at line 14, 15, and 16 on 3, that's where that talks about that displaying or wearing a firearm in an open concept, just prohibiting that. It gives the governmental entity the ability to have that conversation and move against that. So then going all the way, that was an amendment we brought in. And then 21 through 23, these were amendments that were brought to me by our Department of Family Services, our health department, of areas where they said, hey, these could be problems, mental health wards, a DFS, family visitation, something of that nature. That extends over onto page 4 on the top. We go into the line 6, 7, and 8. There was also a conversation, people were concerned, our schools were concerned, our community colleges and the university, about areas where explosive or volatile material may be present that we wouldn't want a firearm in. And so that is just giving that opportunity to take care of that. That next subsection goes through and talks about quite a bit, but on line 14, that D, so it says on 13, it says unless otherwise prohibited under section D of this section, what that D is courts, jails. So correctional facilities and our courtrooms are off limits from carrying, which obviously that is a good thing. So then on line 19 through 23, and then all of page 5 is, and I'm thinking 6 to H, is reinserting the language for our school boards to be able to train and equip their teachers, as we currently have in statute that passed in 17, giving them the opportunity to train and equip teachers, put biometric safes into classrooms, and to put up the signage. So our current schools that have that ability, we're not taking that away from them. And then the bill that you guys passed over to us from your side that gave the funding model for that still applies. So we didn't take that away. We don't want to take that away. We want our teachers trained. We want them armed. That's a great way to protect our children. And then I'm pretty sure from there, I mean, it goes through and there's some more, but those are, there's one more on page 7, line 2, 3, 4, 5. No person that is enrolled in a elementary or secondary school facility can carry in any way, shape, or form. So what this would mean is if there were to be an individual that there's a small carve out, and from what I've heard, it's not been used really, but there's a small carve out where an 18-year-old could go to their sheriff, and if there was circumstances that they could prove the need for, they could get a concealed carry permit. And with the September Supreme Court hearing, they did state that 18, 19, and 20-year-olds have the constitutional right to carry a handgun. This is just saying they don't have the right to carry that in any school they're enrolled in, or into another school if they're enrolled in any school. That way we don't have a kid going to a rival football game with a handgun or something of that nature. This just precludes that. So with that, I turn it over to my good counterpart on the Senate side, if he has anything you'd like to add.
Before we do that, committee, any questions of the representative? Any questions of the representative tonight? I've got one. Just an overall 30,000-foot viewer.
Yes.
Why an individual bill in a budget session?
Okay. Chairman Landon, thank you very much. So this is a bill I ran last year. This is a bill I have been a part of since I got in here, and it's always found its way into a committee that has not been favorable to even having the conversation about or hearing it. And so it's something I just continue to run because I believe that the conversation's a good thing. I ran one bill this year and that's it.
Okay.
And this was the bill to have that conversation.
Senator Cooper.
One short question to follow up. Did you, was this brought forth anywhere for an interim committee study? This is a pretty intensive bill. Was it studied in the interim in any committees?
Go ahead.
Chairman
Representative.
Landon and Senator Cooper. No, it is not. I did suggest it. It was not picked up, but it was a conversation that I did put forward after last year to have that interim conversation, and we didn't pick it up as a Judiciary Committee. Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I will say, though, as we've worked this, like I said, we've put 5 amendments, of which a majority of those have come from people that have said, hey, we've got concerns. Hey, these are some things we can work on. It passed 54-7 out of our body. So I'm not saying that there's not room for improvement, and I'm definitely open to those conversations, but I do believe that it has, in some ways, seen a vetting process with entities involved.
Further questions, committee? Any further questions? I've got another one. So on page 3, if we're gonna, are hospitals considered private property? Talk to me about hospitals, Representative.
Thank you very much, Chairman Landon, for that question. So there are very few. So how it was described to me as we talked about it was anything that has a lease. So it could be a county hospital owned by the county, but if there's a leasee, like I guess we can use Banner Health. That's the leasee of ours. So they have full control over that conversation. Now, my good senator to my right, his is a county-operated hospital and county-funded hospital. And so that would be a carve-out or an exception because that is an actual county hospital. We had discussions and amendments that were brought on this, and the body decided that that was not something that, because of how little it was, and also the fact that it does cover the psychiatric wards in those places where they are concerned about what that looks like, this is not something that they felt that they wanted to pass that amendment.
So when you say that Converse County is a carve-out, that means that this bill would pertain and folks could carry in that facility. But up a little further north, the Banner Hospital, they could not.
Nope. Well, Mr. Chairman, depends on what Banner's policy is, because they could
Correct.
decide that
So
policy.
if Banner chooses, they could prohibit
Absolutely,
them.
Mr. Chairman.
I see, okay. Anything else? Senator Boner, thanks for being here. How about any comments you have on the bill?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for hearing this bill at this late hour. I do appreciate it. I won't add much to the presentation in the interest of time. I do think that we have a well-balanced bill that's been thought through, and remind the committee that this is an old friend, and one I think that even went all the way through the legislative process at one point and didn't make it when it got to the executive. So not a new concept. I agree that, it would have been better if it was an interim topic. But just on the other side of it, it's been, I think, pretty well vetted and will continue to be so, I think, with this committee and the Senate as a whole. So overall, stand in support of the bill. I think it's an important concept for all the reasons that Representative Haraldson laid out. I'm glad that we have the state that we do, where we don't have to deal with these mass shootings nearly as much as other parts of the country, but it's our responsibility to consider what happens if that sense of community breaks down, and this is one viable option to deter any sort of shooting at an a vulnerable area. So I look forward to supporting the bill. I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions of Senator Boner? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question could be for either one of you, I guess. First of all, thanks for adding the amendment back in so that the schools that have already passed the amendment the legislation to arm their teachers. I think there are 4 schools. My district actually is one of them. And so I had a concern when, this bill came down the pike, when that was taken out, because they have to go through quite a bit of training. I think there's 16 hours and then 5 hours. And so they're not like just any little Johnny on the spot that's taken a Hunter education class and walks into a school. But I guess my question really comes back to, with all the money that we've spent in the last few years to increase school security and safety, do you really still think we need this bill?
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Schuler, The answer is absolutely not until we definitely do, if that makes sense. I mean, at the end of the day, no, we're good, we're fine. But I guarantee there's a little school in Texas that thought they were fine too. And that's my concern, is that at the end of the day, I believe we have the fundamental duty of protecting these students. And I know, at least in my community where we have smaller school districts and stuff like that, they are very, very concerned about this. They want this to be in their schools. We don't have the ability through law enforcement. We don't have the ability. I mean, our campuses are very soft. This is a conversation, and for them, it was a deal. The funding for the teachers' training was, they couldn't, it wasn't in their budget. And so they feel very much like their hands are tied. We got, I mean, a community that's 30 minutes from law enforcement pretty much at any time. In 30 minutes, the law enforcement doesn't show up to do anything besides write reports and help with grieving parents. And that's what we don't want to see happen. And so at the end of the day, is there always going to be phenomenal outcomes to all this stuff? No, we can't. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball for that. I understand that. But I will say this, there's a major deterrent when a bad individual, a bad actor knows that there's a definite possibility that they won't live through this because of someone actually standing up and saying, not on our watch, not in our school. Ultimately, every teacher armed would be a phenomenal thing. But in 2017, we haven't seen that mass introduction of these systems into our schools. And so because of that, I believe that there's also a point where this pushes the necessity for this conversation.
Okay. Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, just some questions, trying to follow through here. Let's, and it could be for either one of you, but for example, on page 2, lines 7 through 9, I worked in this statute quite a bit at one time. So WS 68104A, Romanet II and III are the permitted concealed carry, if I recall right. And that Romanet IV is what we call constitutional carry. And it's a catch-all phrase that says something like, any other person that could comply with everything up above shall be allowed to do it without a permit. So just by way of this is structured is lines 7 and 8, 9 bring in constitutional carry. And that would apply to the meetings of a government entity and a meeting of the legislative committee. Then in lines 16 through 18, that's a more limiting deal. That just has, actually just has Romanet II. It doesn't have Romanet III from the concealed carry statute. But that's permitted carry. Clearly that's permitted carry. And that's within the schools. I'm trying to remember what 68104T is that's referenced on page 3. Do you remember off the top of your head?
Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Case. I don't have T right off the top of my head, but we can.
I'll find it.
It's, Mr. Chairman, it's the courtrooms and, law enforcement type,
Thank you.
police stations, stuff like that, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, no person authorized to carry a concealed weapon pursuant to paragraph Romanet I through Romanet 4. So that includes constitutional carry of this section shall carry. So no one's allowed to be in a big list of things, detention facility, any meeting of a government entity, legislature, goes on and on. It's a big, long list. Okay, and then I have one more question. Well, I got two more, actually, Mr. Chairman, just to help me understand how this all fits together.
You're on a roll.
All right, page 4, in part F. So basically, it's saying that the school district can put rules forward with respect to its employees, but any other person that's not an employee would come under the permitted carry. Romanet II, for practical purposes, maybe Romanet 3. I got that right? Okay, and then one more. School district also can prohibit students from carrying under any of the deals. But then I don't understand the reference on 68401, lines 16. This section doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the bill.
Line 16.
Page 7, I'm sorry. Yeah, it sort of seems like maybe we're correcting something else here, but basically the part that's being taken out is 21.3.132, which is guns in schools, I think. And the part that's added is 23.1.302, which is a game and fish statute about regulating of firearms and ammunition and stuff. Am I getting that right? I don't understand how 68401 even fits into this exactly.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So couple things. The 21.3.132 would have been the statute that we made in 2017 for the schools. Because it can't, I mean, we took the language out of that. We took that shell and we put it into this bill
Okay.
so that we can arm our teachers, we can get the biometrics, we can do all of those things. But we had to strike that out so that in a situation where there's a school that isn't choosing to offer this option to their teachers, we don't limit those teachers' ability to carry, which would have been the case under this if we wouldn't have strike that 21.3.132. The other, the 23.1.302 is the game and fish statute. And that was from what our staff told me whenever I asked the same question, well, why is that even in here? They said that was prior conversation that came out in testimony from our good game and fish folks that says that needs to be in here so it gives them that ability, where basically they need that ability to be able to, that they're not exempt. So they asked to be put back in here and felt that was something they needed for this, the gun-free zone conversation. So I asked the same question. The testimony was they needed it, they put it in there.
Okay.
They have not personally testified to me that, but that was.
I think I get it. I think I understand why.
Senator Case?
So I'm not challenging any of these. I'm just trying to understand the bill right now. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, further questions of the sponsors of the bill? Still quite a few questions. I think I'm going to save them. We've got a lot of testimony, gentlemen. Thank you. I'll let you sit back for a little bit. Folks, we're going to be as fair as we can be. I said 3 minutes. I would prefer if you get it done in 2. If we go everybody testifying for that long tonight, we'll be here well into the evening, okay? 10, 11 o'clock. I don't think we need to do that. So I think let's get started. I'm gonna go pro and con, okay? Just so that that's safe. And I'm gonna call out some folks because as they signed up. So Mr. Cole with the NSSF, if you would come forward, please. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'll try and be brief. My name is Nephi Cole. I'm the Director of Government Relations and State Affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation. I would like to provide, hopefully, to the committee some things to think about. We understand that this is a challenging bill for the committee and that many of the people here to speak on this bill are going to feel very strongly and emotionally about this bill. I'd like to share some details that I hope can put you at ease, although they may not do the same to everybody that's here to testify. I'd like you to know that there are 21 states where concealed carry in the capital is legal right now, and that's a mix of constitutional carry states like Utah and other states like Minnesota. I'd like you to know that Idaho, Utah, Montana, Minnesota, and others are also in that number. There are 11 states that allow unlimited concealed carry on campus. They include Arkansas, Colorado, Georgia, Idaho, Kansas, Mississippi, Oregon, Tennessee, Texas, Utah. I I would like you to know how many accidents we've seen as a result of these policies. So for those folks who are concerned that this kind of leads to an uptick in potential on violence in either capitals or on campuses, and that number is 0. So we understand that people are going to, there are emotions that ride high on this issue. I'd like to bring the committee ease that the facts and the stats don't bear out that that is a concern that is warranted based on what we have seen in application. With that, thank you for your time.
Mr. Cole, thank you. Any questions? Okay, let's bring Mr. Ford up, please. Mr. Ford?
Lord, Mr. Ford, what have you done?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Ford, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Quite a party we've got going. Please introduce yourself for everyone. Got a lot of folks streaming in tonight, and welcome to them. We've got folks who want to testify remotely too, but go ahead. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, my name is Dylan Ford, and you can probably see the dark circles under my eyes. I was up all night sub-planning, which I didn't actually have to do, so here we are. But I'm here to ask you to vote no on HB 125. I'm a lifelong resident, a Republican, a gun owner since I was the age of 9. But I think this bill is dangerous. It's a bill that puts kids' lives in direct danger because we're mixing chaos plus firearms, which is something we should never do. We were asked by President Trump to harden our schools, and we've been putting that armor around them. We have bullet-resistant windows, heavy auto-locking doors, policies that prevent armed people from entering the schools, and lockdown protocols in practice for when they do get in. But all that armor that we've put up around our kids to keep them safe doesn't mean much when we're opening our doors wide to armed people. I'm sad to say that in Cheyenne, we have students with parents or older siblings who do belong to gangs. It just is. And so long as they're above 21, they don't have a drug charge, and they fulfill those basic requirements of the permit, these are the ones that we're inviting into our elementary schools strapped with loaded handguns. I also think that anyone who's been to an East versus Central game or a Wyoming versus CSU game knows how heated those fans can get. I am one of them, probably the worst. They know how much chaos that is. And when we add that chaos with firearms, we're going to get negative results. While I respect and I really do enjoy the Second Amendment, I'm also a teacher, and I know the chaos that happens in environments full of little kiddos with brains that, politely put, are not quite developed yet. And as a responsible gun owner, I also know that chaos and guns should never mix, especially when littles are around. And there is no shortage of chaos here. My students are happy to supply it, just ask my 4th hour. Additionally, we're applying a concealed carry law that was never designed to be applied to schools, applied without raising the threshold of safety to accommodate that large change. So again, I'm asking you to keep our kids safe and vote no on HB 125. Thank you.
Mr. Ford, thank you.
Of course. I should stay for questions if you have it.
Any questions? Okay, thank you so much.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Gosh, please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. My name is Brian Gosh. I'm a lawyer and registered lobbyist with the National Rifle Association of America, here to support House Bill 125. I thank the sponsors of the bill for bringing it, explaining the bill thoroughly. And I appreciate the committee's statements about trying to work with the sponsors and the concept of eliminating some gun-free zones. Gun-free zones without sufficient security added to it are just become soft targets for the bad guys to enter, with no good guys there with guns to stop the bad guy. Take a look at the elementary, secondary schools. Under Wyoming law, we force kids to go to school, and their parents, under threat of criminal penalty for truancy. If we force kids to go to school, we should provide proper security measures to make sure they don't become victims of some of these school shootings. Previously referenced by another proponent was other states surrounding Wyoming allow capital carry, allow carry in government buildings, like South Dakota, Nebraska, Utah, Idaho, Montana. And that's been without incident. The previous testifier talked about kind of a parade of horribles that will happen if you allow this. That same kind of testimony was given in opposition to capital carry, constitutional carry, and those things just didn't happen. I work in Minnesota as well. I know it's not a surrounding state, but they've allowed capital carry for years and years, and that has not been a problem. They do not have metal detectors at the front doors. You will testify next to a Harvard grad supporting gun control, and I've got a Glock 43X on me. Debates get heated. No one's brandishing, no one's pulling out a firearm, no one's threatening anyone, because that's against the law. You can't do that. Law-abiding gun owners don't do that. But if a bad actor acts up, thankfully there's somebody there with a gun to put that bad guy down. Law enforcement's there as well, but sometimes law enforcement, as previously alluded to with school shootings, church shootings, it'll take minutes and minutes. And sometimes you have 26 dead, 17 dead. But in those situations where you've had an armed parishioner, for example, like in Texas, after that bad church shooting, he put the bad guy down immediately. Instead of 26 people, there were 2 dead. So with that, I'd urge your support and continue working on this concept. Thank you, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
members of the committee.
Thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate you being here. Any questions? Okay, let's keep going. Let's go to Erica Cole and Barb Cook and Beth Howard. You're welcome to all 3 come up at the same time, okay? And that way we can move through testimony a little bit more quickly. Please state your name and for the record. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Erica Cole. I am a resident of Cheyenne, Wyoming, Senate District 7. I'm a professional engineer. I'm a public servant, but above all, I'm a mother, and I'm here speaking in opposition of House Bill 125. I'm also a volunteer with Moms Demand Action, obviously, for Gun Sense in America. I feel it's important that you know I'm a gun owner myself, and I believe there's a time and a place for guns, but guns everywhere is not the answer. And it's most certainly not the answer with this bill. I feel it's really been poorly researched and scabbed together with amendments, and nobody's really taken a step back to look at the full implications and numerous unintended consequences of this bill. Upon introduction of this bill in the House Judiciary Committee, Representative Harrelson stated that there was no impacts to open carrying of a weapon with this bill, but that's a dangerously gross oversight, as this bill removes the ability for any entity to regulate firearms other than the legislator themselves, unless it's explicitly detailed in this legislation. Upon 3rd reading in the House, an amendment was added allowing government entities to prohibit the open carry into a government meeting space, because Representative Washut, as he stated in the committee, he felt that concealed carry was related to personal defense, whereas open carry could be for intimidation. So I posed the question, is the same not true at our colleges and universities? Because this bill, made a weak attempt at protecting K-12 and colleges and universities by requiring the concealed permit for the concealed carry of a weapon, but the open carrying or wearing of a weapon is not addressed. It is legal to possess a firearm in Wyoming starting at the age of 18. And so you will be able to legally open carry on college and university campuses, because they will not have any ability to regulate firearms. I just question how University of Wyoming enrollment will be impacted by this when, parents and high schoolers visit and they see students open carrying in the student union. I feel like it's going to limit the free exchange of ideas, and it's pretty critical development time for students to be able to express their ideas and have debates. I would also like to point out this bill is amended to prohibit the concealed carry of weapons into sporting events where alcohol is sold, such as addressing the concerns with War Memorial Stadium and how rowdy we all know it can get. But once again, open carry will be on the table, because the University of Wyoming will have no ability to regulate open carrying of firearms in that venue. Representative Harrelson just said tonight that there's a lot of rural communities that really would like this option so that they can protect their schools. And I mean, the current legislation allows that school district to exercise the option to allow concealed carry already It even allows at the bottom of it for them to waive the training requirements for rural communities. So he stated that it was a barrier because of the cost of training. This legislation is not coming with any budget. That's not going to overcome that barrier of the cost of training is what's prohibiting some of these school districts from implementing a concealed carry program. They're already able to do it, and they can actually waive that training. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Please continue.
Okay. Hi, my name is Barb Cook. I'm a wife of a retired Air Force colonel, mom of 3 adult children. 2 of those are employed in Laramie County School District 1. I'm a grandma of 3 students. I'm a current school volunteer, and I'm a retired educator of 21 years. I went to college to learn to teach, not to carry a gun to kill. Thank you for allowing me to testify in opposition of House Bill 125 today. Due to my previous profession, my volunteer work in schools, and conversations with my children and teacher friends, I will speak today about what I know. I'm totally aware of the activities, both positive and negative, that go on inside the classroom. Every day, challenging students and their parents exhibit ever-escalating inappropriate behavior that can cause a risk to other classmates and school personnel. If any of these people had the ability to carry a gun with them into school, I can only imagine the outcome of this scenario. I scoured numerous sources looking for statistics that would support the fact that concealed carried guns make places safer. I found none. 0. The opposite is true. Concealed carry increases the homicide rate and does not work as an effective deterrent to crime, only bringing more pain to communities around the U.S. Gun-free zones are intended to reduce violent crime, suicide, and mass shootings in specific locations. So to do away with these zones seems reckless. In the first 64 days of this year, there have been at least 32 incidents of gunfire on school grounds, resulting in 13 deaths and 25 injuries. Guns have no place in schools or campuses. I believe that we all want to make schools a safe environment for learning, but House Bill 125 will not bring us closer to that goal. Clearly, the research indicates that introducing more guns to our schools would diminish the safety of our students and our teachers. I was head teacher in one of the best schools in all of Cheyenne. Wonderful clientele. However, there was never a shortage of challenging parents or grandparents that might have been frustrated with the administration or teachers or even other students. So it's important that potential disagreements can be solved peacefully and without risk of escalation. Injecting loaded firearms into those situations could have terrible consequences. Research shows that the presence of guns makes people more aggressive. Schools must be safe havens for learning. One of my most important jobs as a teacher was to keep kids safe. House Bill 125 would put teachers and students in harm's way. And as an educator and mom of 2 teachers and grandma of 3 students, I want gun-free zones to remain intact. Guns have no place in school. Please defeat this bill, and thanks for staying late to listen to us.
Thank you very much. I'll just remind everyone, if we all go 3 or 4 minutes, it's going to be a long night. So do what you can for me. Thank you.
Chair Landon and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Beth Howard, a longtime resident of Cheyenne, a mother and a grandmother, and I'm here to voice my opposition to House Bill 125 and my concern for the safety of all Wyoming citizens. I am testifying today as a volunteer with Wyoming Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. As the bringer of the bill, I also believe we have the fundamental duty for protecting our students. But House Bill 125 does not do that. House Bill 125 is based on a false premise, the myth that mass shooters are more likely to target gun-free zones. This is not true. The overwhelming majority of fatal mass shootings in the United States occur in locations where guns are allowed, such as private homes or public locations. The fact is, most mass shootings occur in areas where guns are permitted. Of the 156 mass shootings that occurred from 2009 to 2016, only 10% occurred in gun-free zones. Most shootings, 63%, occurred in private homes. 8 of the 10 deadliest mass shootings occurred in locations that either allowed firearms or had armed guards present. Only 2 occurred where firearms were prohibited. Laws and policies that force K through 12 schools and colleges to allow guns on campus are likely to lead to more shootings, homicides, and suicides, but are unlikely to prevent mass shootings. Important amendments have been made to this bill for hospitals and state agencies dealing with mental health and family violence concerns. Those same issues exist in our schools, and local control remains essential to address them. Firearms are now the leading cause of death for children in the United States. This is a devastating fact, and we can do better. Guns do not belong in sensitive areas such as schools and government buildings. There are many ways to protect citizens from violence, but this bill is not one of them. I urge you to vote no on House Bill 125. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks to all three of you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, the lady that spoke first, I'm sorry, I should have got your name. The discussion about open carry, I'm not seeing that in this bill. So maybe that was in an earlier version, but what I'm seeing is on page 3, line 6, nothing in this section shall be construed to, and then come down to lines 14 through 16, prohibit a government entity from prohibiting the open carry, display, or wearing of a firearm in a meeting with that government entity. And I think that applies to schools and everything else. So I'm not argumentative. I'm just trying to make sure that I haven't missed something.
Ms. Cole?
Yeah, Chair Landon, Senator Case. I mean, it specifically says a meeting of, so I wouldn't call a game at War Memorial Stadium a meeting of a government entity. So there's no federal regulation like the Federal Gun-Free Zones Act that protects K through 12 in some ways. And there's no ability for anybody to regulate firearms on their property if it's not explicitly outlined in this. So time after time, you'll see this legislation only referencing concealed carry, the lawful concealed carry. I really think there is a dangerous gap here for the open carry aspect, because in Wyoming, we are not regulating open carry. We have very few regulations about open carry. And this bill takes anybody else's ability to make any regulations about firearms on their property away from them and just leaves it with the legislature. So I believe that there is a dangerous oversight here.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Senator
I think you
Case.
might have missed it, but we'll get somebody else, honestly. I think you might be wrong on that. It's okay. I don't want to argue with you and tie up our time.
No
I
problem.
appreciate
Thank
you
you.
greatly, but I think you might be wrong about that.
Thank you. Appreciate all three of you. Let's go to, I noticed that we've got Senator Bouchard here. We also have Representative Nyman in the back. Representative Baird, you guys, you're good? Okay, you're sure welcome to come up. So let's go to you, Senator Bouchard. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We are limiting 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes.
I'll be as quick as I can. Some of you that have been here.
But I'll give you some leeway because, you know.
So, Mr. Chairman, Anthony Bouchard, Senate District 6. Some of you have been here long enough to recognize me as a gun rights expert. You know that I worked on the outside. This bill here is so much tighter than the bill that we did pass. Remember, we passed it through both chambers, and it was vetoed by the governor. But this bill is, if you remember, we had Dr. John Lott here testifying way back then. And what he really presented to you was the stats on concealed carry permit holders as being the most trusted citizens, even more trusted than the police. And I mean, I hate to say that, but those are the real stats. Some of the things that have been talked about here are 21 and 18 years old, tossed around very loosely. This bill applies to 21-year-old. The only time that has an exception in this bill is if a sheriff allows an 18-year-old to carry, because that's in law, he can bypass that. But this has a thing saying if they're a student, they can't carry anyway. So I think that walls them out. There's some mention about people that, like, for instance, guns are the most dangerous things and the most deaths come to children. That's not true. The first one's motor vehicles, the next one's suffocation, the next one's falls. There's fires. I mean, guns doesn't come in the top list there. As far as we go to more shootings because we allow guns, there's no facts on that either. Most of these shootings happen in gun-free zones. That's what the stats do show us. So anyway, this bill here has a lot of the things that, I mean, as you know, Mr. Chairman, I was the guy that pushed for constitutional carry, repeal gun-free zones. So this bill's a lot tighter. I think that if you look around this building, what stops people from coming in here? I mean, yeah, there's a few cops out there every once in a while, but you know that there's a sign out there. That sign doesn't stop the bad guys. I mean, bad guys can come in here if they wanted to. So this bill rectifies those kind of problems. So I would stand for any questions on this bill.
Any questions for the senator? Thank you, Anthony, for being here tonight. I'm going to bring forward Mr. Dorr, Mr. Moody, and Kathy, I apologize, I cannot read your last name. If you all three would come up and be ready to testify for us. We'll see about three at a time. And Mr. Dorr, take it away.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time tonight. I know it's been a long day, so I'm going to go very, very quickly. Here on behalf of Wyoming gun owners, and our members are in full support of HB 125 as written today. Our members are sick and tired of seeing dangerous criminals walk into gun-free zones and murder innocent people who can't fight back. And that's just the reality of a gun-free zone. There's nobody there who can defend innocent life. Gun-free zones have been proven repeatedly to be the #1 target of dangerous criminals out to rack up a body count. Wyoming doesn't have very many gun-free zones, but these areas of schools, the Capitol, others are a real problem that this bill is designed to address. We wish to go further. We wish it would be applied to all law-abiding citizens, not just those with a permit, but it's a great step forward. We support the bill as written. Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, thank you. Appreciate it. Any questions, Biddy? Okay, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mark Moody here in Cheyenne, a member of various gun rights groups. I support the bill 100% too. I would say me and supermajority of Wyoming citizens, we need this bill because the gun-free zones are killing zones. We see it in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, Denver. We don't need it here in Wyoming. Okay, this is a Wyoming solution for Wyoming problem of some of the gun-free zones we have. Happy to take questions.
Okay, any questions, committee? Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good evening. And Kathy, what's your last name?
Sigliano.
Sigliano. I apologize. I couldn't
That's
pick
okay.
up on that, but welcome.
It happens often. Thank you, and I appreciate you guys working into this hour. My name is Kathy Sigliano. I am a resident here in Cheyenne. I have 2 boys here in the district. One has graduated. He graduated last year. Second Amendment rights. That restricting this right in specific areas infringes upon individuals' constitutional freedoms, as the Second Amendment does not come with location-based limitations. Equal protection under the law. The restrictions of gun-free zones create unequal protection under the law. Individuals should have consistent access to self-defense tools across various locations, and the presence of gun-free zones could disproportionately impact law-abiding citizens who may be left defenseless in certain situations. I am in support of this bill as a parent of 2 boys here in Cheyenne. I would feel safer knowing that someone could be met with resistance if they came to the school to do harm. My boys also said that they would feel safer. I think having law-abiding citizens being able and capable of carrying would serve as a deterrent for someone coming to do harm at their school. Schools are on lockdown almost daily for weapons being brought to the school. I think that if a school had a school shooting here or anywhere, and there were teachers and, just parents that were volunteering at the school, they could definitely help with the situation. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School had a mass shooting in Florida, and they had law enforcement that refused to go into that building. If the building already had armed, law-abiding citizens, I think a lot less lives would have been caused that day to be harmed. So I would really appreciate the passing of this bill, and I think a lot of parents in the state of Wyoming would also. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it. Any questions? Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Let's go to Mr. Howard, Ms. Wilson, Ms. Gamelski. If all three of you would come up and be prepared to testify this evening, I would appreciate it. Thank you. While you make your way up, Ms. Wilson, Ms. Gamelski, go ahead, Mr. Howard. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman, Senators. My name is Peter Howard, and I'm here on behalf of myself as a parent and as a former combat soldier. And the opinions I give today are my own, not my employer's. I'm tired of legislators and lobbyists talking about firearms like they're life preservers on the side of a pool. I'm tired of hearing about it because guns are instruments of death and they need to be in trained hands. We've heard about Utah. We've heard about Minnesota. Both of those states require people who concealed carry to go through specific handgun concealed carry weapon specific training. Our state does not do that. Our concealed carry law allows somebody who competed in a shooting competition when they were a kid to get a permit. It allows someone with hunter safety card to get a permit. Our permit law is much looser than the states we're trying to compare this to. Second, we're here at 8 p.m. There is a room full of stakeholders here at their only opportunity to provide public comment. 8 p.m., you got 2/3 of a room here to testify against a bill. If there was a topic that's appropriate for an interim discussion where we can talk about these statistics and sort out what's right or wrong, because I've heard a lot of things that I think are wrong, but maybe we should have the opportunity to sort through that. This is that topic. Bringing it by when all the stakeholders don't have an opportunity to speak is a sneaky thing to do. Third, we know that there's might be some grassroots opposition to this. The districts in Wyoming have the opportunity to arm their teachers. Only 3 have elected to do so, 3 or 4. They've had the opportunity. Something has stopped them. It's not that the discussions haven't happened in those districts. We need to have the opportunity for the stakeholders to speak, for the legislators to sort out what's true and what's false. We've heard about my organization, my communities. Where are those people? The people here are vastly against this bill. There needs to be more opportunity for public comment, discussion, and truth in this discussion.
Mr. Howard, I appreciate it. And I do want to say, this is not ideal. And unfortunately, during a budget session like this, it does get pushed to some late hours sometimes. And it just so happened that this bill fell that way. So I do appreciate your frustration.
The important thing, Chairman, is we're still here
at
late hours.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, and the senators on the committee. I'm Jean-Luc Wilson. I am a student at the University of Wyoming, and I have some concerns about the safety on campus and the culture that could possibly be created on this campus, as well as some gray areas that could be brought up. I currently am a sophomore at the university, but I live in the dormitories, and I have some concerns about how these concealed carry permits or the private ownership of a gun within these dormitories could impact the livelihoods of these people. We heard some testimony earlier about how unruly these places can get, and especially a dormitory in the transitional periods of some students' lives, these accesses to having these kinds of firearms more available could pose risks to the safety of others within the vicinity itself, as well as the individuals with those firearms in such a tumultuous period in our lives. I mean, you were all young at one point and understand that. My partner here will be addressing some other concerns about the nature of this carry on the university itself, but I just would like to call attention to some of these grayer areas, such as maybe the classroom building, the dormitories, places where we may not want to have a unfettered access to concealed carry weapons or the private ownership or storage of these weapons on a university campus. And with that, I yield to questions if there are any.
Mr. Wilson, thank you, and I apologize for misrepresenting, who you were. I couldn't tell from the name. And did you drive over from the university tonight?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it's no problem at all.
Thank you for being
Chairman.
here. Appreciate that. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you all for taking the time to listen to us tonight. My name is Sophia Gomelski. I'm also a student at the university, and I'm here to urge you to vote no on this bill, frankly, just because it has unintended consequences. And as a student, I think it's concerning when we allow for bills with unintended consequences for students to pass, especially during a budget session, when bills like this have failed in previous years. This bill allows for, or could potentially allow for, open carry in educational institutions. As a student, all I can say is that I'm disappointed. In the most respectful way possible, I urge you all to consider the concerns of students, families, and educators over those of gun lobbyist groups. The reason that this bill does not prohibit the regulation of firearms for somebody on their own private property is because it's their space. It's their right to feel safe on their own property. The simple fact that this legislation fails to reckon with is that schools, our schools and educational institutions, are the students. These are our spaces. It's our right to feel safe in our spaces that are created for us. I don't feel safe in a classroom when I know that somebody has a weapon, or one of my classmates could have a weapon that could kill me in a matter of seconds. You may be wondering, well, what's the difference? I mean, if people are already allowed to have guns. Well, I just talked to one of our state troopers and I asked them about their training requirements, and they're a lot more intense than the ones that a regular civilian is allowed to carry a gun with. That's because they have a responsibility to protect us. I don't think that a student, someone who's 21, 22, feels that same sense of responsibility and should be able to have a gun with them. I wouldn't feel safe. I wouldn't feel safe going to school. My high school in Laramie had multiple shooting warnings and threats, and it shook everybody there to their cores. The mere thought of a firearm or a gun being near our campus sent over half of our students home within less than an hour. That's because this is also about a parent's right. Parents don't just have a right, but they have an obligation to keep their children safe, even when their child is 18 years old and attending university. And no parent will send their child to school, to a government entity, to a university, knowing that instead of their kid coming home and telling them about an interesting or heated debate that they had at the university, that instead their kid just didn't make it home. There was an amendment added that created a provision so that government entities may prohibit open carry into a meeting of a government entity. But what about us? What about schools? Why is open carry prohibited in somewhere like the state legislature, but students aren't protected by it? Thank you, senators.
Mr. Wilson, thank you very much for being here. Did you drive over from the university tonight?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you for doing that. Appreciate you being here. Let's go to Mr. Jones. Mr. Winnie, please come forward. We're going to keep marching through, folks.
And
Trying to
Mr.
get to
Chairman,
everyone.
if anybody can clear up the issue of the open carry, I would appreciate that, because I'm reading the bill differently.
I hope everybody heard that, and we've got some experts in the crowd, so we would like to get to the bottom of the impact on open carry.
I think I can address that, Chairman.
Good evening, welcome. If you would state your name for the record, we've got folks out across the hinterlands who want to know who you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. My name is Mark Jones. I live in Johnson County, Wyoming. I'm a parent of 2 children. I am also one of those dreaded gun lobbyists. I represent Gun Owners of America. We have about 3 million members. But I also support that as a father and as a citizen and as a resident of Wyoming. Since there's been so many questions about this open carry issue, I'll address that first. Federal law prohibits the carry of firearms on any school property in America without, the only exception is with a state-issued permit. Therefore, Wyoming issues a concealed carry permit. So any permit on any school grounds will be done under concealed carry through this bill. That answers the question about whether or not people will be brandishing firearms on school properties. They will not, or they will be in violation of federal law.
Senator Case.
Just this, and does that include colleges and universities?
Yes, sir. The Federal Gun-Free Zones Act applies to all schools in America that take federal funds. So that would be colleges, universities, K through 12. The only way around that is with a state-issued permit. And many states have done that, as is being proposed in this legislation. I think one of my colleagues has already pointed out that at least 11 states allow this practice on campuses. So this is not anything new.
Okay, Mr. Jones, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, senators. So I know this is an emotional issue, and I've heard lobbyists and gun groups kind of painted in a bad light. And I'll point out that my organization represents doctors, lawyers, farmers, oil field workers, teachers, policemen. These are people that believe in their Second Amendment rights and view this issue very differently than some of the people in this room. There is a wealth of data available on this issue. Dr. John Lott was mentioned. He runs an organization called the Crime Prevention Research Council. There are many other researchers who have researched these issues. There's also FBI statistics. There's CDC statistics, and I'm going to quote some of these. 94% of mass shootings do occur in gun-free zones. According to the Obama's CDC, guns are used between 16 and 100 times more often to stop a crime than to commit a crime. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, 86% of police officers believe that armed civilians can stop mass shootings or reduce the severity of mass shootings. These are statistics available from our own government and from very well-renowned researchers who have researched these issues for years. Chicago, which is probably one of the most heavily regulated jurisdictions in America, it is in many ways the ultimate gun-free zone, is statistically more dangerous than Afghanistan. The murder rate in Chicago is off the charts and has been for the last decade.
Mr. Jones, I'm going to give you a little leeway because you were good enough to answer some questions for us up
Yes, sir.
front.
I'll be quick and finish up.
You bet. Thank you very much.
I'll point to our neighbor Utah real quickly. They have done this for 30 years. So I know it's an emotional issue, but gun-free zones are targets for mass murderers and criminals. We can do better in Wyoming. And the other thing I'll point out, it is a Second Amendment issue. Our founders had the foresight to put this in our Constitution. We have a God-given right to protect ourselves. If I go see my daughter at a play at church, I have a God-given right to be able to protect her. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
We do appreciate you being here, Mr. Jones. Thanks. Mr. Winnie.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie from Bondurant in Sublette County. For a number of years, I volunteered to do oral reading at the Bondurant Elementary School. 2 rooms plus a gym and a lunchroom. That's probably about 20 to 30 minutes away from where the nearest deputies usually are. I have long considered gun-free zones feel-good legislation, and therefore I support this bill. And here's why. All across my career in the Navy, I was around nuclear weapons. I've been a CO of a nuclear submarine in the days when the CO held the keys to the 16 ballistic missiles. I was Chief of Command and Control at U.S. Strategic Command. My office wrote the publications for release of nuclear weapons. I had to be interviewed in Berkeley, California, by the civilian head of the DoD nuclear weapons programs. As I walked around there, I found street signs put up by the city, white reflective background, red lettering, nuclear weapons free zone. Oh, come on. Consider the 4J school out on Highway 59, south of Gillette. they're probably 30, 40, 45 minutes away from the nearest deputy on any given day. So I submit to you, Mr. Chairman, that an armed person in the school, maybe a school resource officer, maybe a teacher, is by far the better deterrent against somebody that would come in and do harm. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Winnie. Any questions? Okay, let's keep going tonight. Let's go to Mr. Hellenbolt and, Misty, I'm sorry, Misty Hellenbolt, if you'd please come forward. And then we'll go with Mr. Mullen, Mr. Farmer, Mr. Brown, and on with Ms. Taylor after that. Okay, good evening. Yeah, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Many of my points have been made already, so I will keep this brief. My name is Misty Hellenbolt. I'm a resident of Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I cry.
That's okay. Catch your breath. And if you would get real close to that
Yes.
microphone, we'd sure
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
So I will keep it brief. We have heard this is an emotional event. I am currently missing bedtime. Please vote no.
Mr. Mullen, good evening.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tate Mullen, the Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. We've heard from a number of our members across the state, including elementary educators, secondary and community college members, who are incredibly concerned about the consequences of this bill. For many of them, proposals such as this may have significant implications for attraction and retention. On behalf of those members, WEA is asking you that you vote no on this measure. To be clear, the vast majority of our teachers do not want guns in our schools. Reduced to its most basic philosophy, government is a discussion about the trade-offs between freedom and security. And let's be real clear, this is a dynamic that is a trade-off. If you wish to debate this bill as a means to extend freedom, please recognize that comes at the expense of the security and safety for some of our most vulnerable Wyoming citizens, our young Wyoming students, educators, and education support staff. The idea that measures such as this improve security and safety are patently false and are not backed by sound research or with sound research methods. The basis for policies such as this, and we heard this tonight many times, are the inaccurate claims that the majority of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. This claim comes from a study by gun rights advocacy crime group, Crime Prevention Research Center, and their president, John Lott. However, the methodology of the study has come under significant scrutiny by many policy experts, including the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. The study suffers from significant definitional problems. During the study, many states banned or restricted concealed firearms. This would mean that most shootings that occurred in that time frame would have taken place in gun-free zones. There are a number of others that I have included in a policy memo that I sent to you all. We have heard a number of other pieces of research. I'm not going to go through all of those. One of them that is relevant to this bill, as it would allow any adult with a concealed carry permit to carry in our schools. School shootings that target elementary schools, they are far deadlier than secondary schools. It is adults who target elementary schools, and those are typically the result of domestic or workplace violence. There are direct and positive correlations with the number of guns and access to them and suicide and murder rates, and relaxing concealed carry regulations such as repealing gun-free zones increase firearm assaults. I want to bring this back to a Wyoming context. So the legislature has worked well to maintain the culture of our great state. To do this means that we need to recognize and understand our history. Let's make no mistake about it. Wyoming's culture is a very proud Second Amendment culture. However, as much as the state has a strong history of Second Amendment rights advocacy, it also has a well-documented history of balancing Second Amendment rights and our citizens' safety and security. In fact, the majority of our state's earliest towns and communities had ordinances specifically prohibiting carrying a firearm, either openly or concealed within town limits.
Mr. Mullen, time limit?
Yep,
Please
absolutely.
wrap it up.
So what we would ask of you in the honor of our state's tradition and our history is that we ask that you keep that tradition and that you vote this bill down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. With me, Dr. Boyd Brown. Mr. Chairman, I think I share with you the concerns that you started your discussion with. This is a big topic for a late hour. This is something that by history, our association is opposed. We support the local control that exists under current Wyoming law. Today, there are 4 Wyoming school districts that have adopted policies for concealed carry by staff, 2 of those represented by senators here. And there are several other districts that have had or are having those conversations right now. It's our position that those decisions at the local level are the best decisions. Under the current process, it does require a conversation with local law enforcement. It does require some very specific thought about the facts and circumstances of each individual community. So, Mr. Chairman, I think our position is that this is a decision best made at the local level. I very much do appreciate the amendment that was brought in the House that begins on page 4, line 19, regarding school districts and the ability to regulate employees. As was noted, that still does not allow for the regulation of non-employees. However, Mr. Chairman, one of the issues that we feel has not yet been adequately evaluated is you now have a public employer who has put in place of potentially denying their employees the right that the non-employee has. And so is that a disparate treatment? Is that something under the law that creates a potential liability situation for the school district? And therefore, does that become, in effect, a no-go for the school district? In other words, if the school district is treating their employees differently than a member of the public, does that create a liability for the school district in restricting the rights of individuals? So with that, Mr. Chairman, we just ask you to have deeper conversation of this, broader conversation with consideration of the input of more individuals, perhaps as an interim topic.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Boyd Brown, WSBA, Wyoming School Boards Association. Just want to talk a little bit about the process and get you to think about where we're at right now. On the House, there were 14 amendments brought. That's not quite as many as the budget bill, but that's quite a bit for a bill. So I guess whenever I think about that, I think there might be an opportunity for us to take this to an interim session and maybe do a little more vetting, do some more conversation about what's going on and look at that. With that, I'm going to answer any questions you have and go on.
Any questions, committee? Mr. Brown, what do you hear from the teachers out across? Is there any concerns?
Again, I would go back to, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I would go back to, most of them feel very comfortable with their local school boards making those decisions. And again, I think going back to what we know is the government closest to the people is probably best. So that's kind of what I've heard. And again, I'm going to tell you that I've not had a real broad array of staff members contact me.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate all of you being here tonight. Let's go with Ms. Taylor and Mr. Tribbley.
Chairman, can I just answer the open carry question, please?
Let's finish up some testimony, Senator, and I'll come right back to you. How about that?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'll go ahead and get started.
Good evening, folks, absolutely.
My name is Erin Taylor. I am the Executive Director of the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. And I do have with me here Dr. Walt Tribley. He's the president at Sheridan College. I'll represent the position of the Trustees Association, and that is what you heard just now, is that they would prefer to have the option of making that decision at their local boards of trustees. I do appreciate that there's been an amendment to, take care of special places on campus where there might be explosives, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of other places on campus that cause concern, and there's a lot of questions. So I would like to cede the rest of my time to Dr. Tribley.
Okay, Dr. Tribely, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Lamb, members of the committee. Thank you for hearing from the public so late at night. Local control is important. This bill is going to place the responsibility for the consequences of the bill, whatever they are, on your fellow elected colleagues or Board of Trustees, locally elected, and they will have the responsibility to implement this law. So some of the things that we would be recommending, that I would be recommending to our Board of Trustees, they may not accept it, is that you please consider not allowing firearms to be stored in the residence halls. A few reasons for this, just a couple. What if there is a law-abiding citizen, outstanding member of the community, is a concealed weapons carry, passed all the tests, is a shining example of a responsible gun owner, gets placed with a roommate who is not in the same room. Some campuses are wet, allow alcohol, some do not. I think we should be real in the United States. All campuses are wet, whether they're legally wet or not. Alcohol is there.
Yeah.
We make movies
Not
about
yet,
these things.
Senator.
There's a reason why insurance companies change the insurance rates for males when they turn 25. We are concerned about the safe implementation of any law like this. Please give our trustees the power and the authority to own the responsibility for this decision. They are good people. They make good decisions. And I certainly would sit for any comments or questions at this late hour.
So, Dr. Tribely, what's your situation with your residence halls now? How do you handle finding a firearm in the residence hall?
Chairman Landon, members of the committee, we welcome people that come to Sheridan College that wish to participate in the shooting sports and to take their firearms hunting or using in whatever law-abiding ways they can. We currently have them place their weapons in a safe when they wish to go, their firearms, when they wish to go get access to those weapons. One of our student leaders is a competitive trap shooter. They go, they get access to those firearms, and then they use them and they put them back. It's important, particularly for us, because we do have students in the dorms that are 21 years old or older. They do have rights to consume alcohol, and if we keep the dorms with firearms and there's that alcohol being consumed, that's an issue. Whether it's a wet campus or not, there will be alcohol we have to watch. So right now, Chairman Landon, they keep them in a safe, they check them out, check them in. If you're going hunting in the morning, you gotta leave before dawn. You can put your weapon in a locked vehicle and then just go and come back and put it back into storage. I am concerned if we have concealed weapons, handguns, 9mm with a full metal jacket will go through the wall, an elk round, a 300 Winchester Magnum with a stout bullet that has an accidental discharge will go through several walls. So whatever these rules are, allowing us to maintain safety for accidental discharge and others, roommate situations that are not appropriate to have somebody that should be that close to a firearm, we would take that under advisement and recommend to our Board of Trustees, who will make good decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman, I think that gets us through the list that we have. I'd like to, Pierre, we have some he was not. I tell you what I will do as we get ready to take some Zoom calls. Okay, we'll have remote testimony here in a moment. But Senator Bouchard, you said you had some information for the committee. Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anthony Bouchard, Senate District 6. So open carry seems to come up quite a bit. You know, what's really interesting about open carry in Wyoming is there really isn't regulation on that. So yeah, technically on a college campus, there is no state prohibition on open carry on a campus. on a college campus. Now, there is also some other information given here today, which was kind of wrong. So in 1990, Senate File 3266 on the federal level, it was sponsored by Joe Biden. It was a gun-free zone bill. Public schools through K-12, it did not handle college campuses. And the reason that Utah allows carry with just a 4-hour class in Utah is because in that Senate bill that was passed, it allows states to, if they have a permit process and they want to allow those people to carry on campus, on public school campus, they can. And so Utah does allow on a college campus and on a school, but it's all tied back because the Federal Gun-Free Zone Act allows that. As far coming back to the open carry, this bill actually creates the first open carry law we have in our state. And Senator Case told you about it. It's on page 3, line 6. Nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit a governmental entity from prohibiting the open carry, displaying, or wearing of a firearm into a meeting of that governmental entity. That's the first piece of open carry restriction that we've ever had in this state. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, Senator. Let's go to Mr. Thompson real quickly, and then we'll go online to, we have a handful of people who want to testify remotely. Do we still have them on board? We have 3 of them? Okay. Thompson, good evening.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Alan Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of WASCOP, the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. And our organization is neither for nor against this bill, but I wanted to point out an amendment that was placed across the hall seems to have been typoed in the bill. If I could draw your attention to page 4, line 11. The amendment, House Bill Standing Committee 1 amendment indicates in the last line that word "for" should follow another person. So as that sentence from line 10 reads, any person who knowingly prohibits entry to another person to lawfully, doesn't grammatically make sense. That "to" should be "for" according to the amendment from across the hall.
Okay, much appreciated. So, Mr. Thompson, we had testimony once up in the center part of the state that in the case of any kind of violence or a shooting, the police chief told us at that point that the first person that they're going to take out is somebody with a gun. Is that still the position of a lot of our sheriffs and chiefs of police when they come to a campus shooting, for example, and they see somebody standing there with a gun? Aren't they going to take them out?
Mr. Chairman, that's been a discussion that we've been having a lot over the last couple of weeks. And I think this bill brings on a training component for law enforcement. Because historically in Wyoming, our response to an active shooter in any location, oftentimes we know whether it be some other entity like a college that has prohibited carry. More often than not, when we see someone with a handgun, they're likely the bad guy. Now, this would be a training issue for law enforcement, especially related to schools. And we appreciate the amendments that have been placed in there to secure the rights for those school boards on the local level to maintain training requirements and other things. But the first line in that statute that would be removed if this were to pass says in consultation with law enforcement. And that was our ability to have those conversations with those school districts that have employees that carry right now. So we would recognize them, we would know them, we would expect them. And I'm confident that our local school boards and local entities will continue that, whether it's in statute or not. But I think that consultation is very important with our local law enforcement on the local level.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Any questions for the sheriffs and chiefs? We do have one more, and my apologies to those waiting online, but we do have, I think, the Association of Municipalities is here. And please come forward. Mr. Schilling, is that right?
Very good.
Good to see you.
Chairman Landon, senators of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I'll try to make my remarks brief. As one of the previous speakers brought up.
Can you introduce yourself? I'm sorry, Justin.
Sorry about that, sir.
No problem.
Justin Schilling, proud to serve the 98 cities and towns of Wyoming that make up the Wyoming Association of Municipalities as their member services manager. As one of the previous speakers brought up, some of the first ordinances passed by early cities and towns in Wyoming were gun control ordinances. Cheyenne, September 30th, 1867, outlawed the carrying of guns in town, open or concealed, punishable by fine or imprisonment. Casper followed suit in 1897, Lusk in 1898, and Worland decided to be fashionably late by passing theirs in 1906. I have to tip my hat to Dr. Phil Roberts from UW for that research. I didn't come up with those. Irony that the popular sentiment in Wyoming during the literal Wild West stands in polar opposition to the year 2024, surpassed only by the thought that Wyoming cities and towns that literally started making local decisions on firearms regulations 157 years ago somehow suddenly can't be trusted with the responsibility. None of our members have ever asked us to seek or support this bill. We're neither for guns or against guns. We're for local control. There's nothing, and the reason that our folks have never asked specifically for us to pursue this bill or to support this bill is that they don't need it. Our cities and towns can allow what they would like to allow in their meetings now. Swan's position in giving that Wyoming has always valued home rule, that it should be their right to decide. Continue to trust your local governments to handle this issue responsibly, as they've done for over a century and a half. With that, I'd stand for any questions.
Mr. Schilling, thank you. Anything, committee or the municipalities? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Let's go to Zoom tonight. Let's go with Mr. North first. A commissioner from up in my neck of the woods. Good evening, Commissioner North. Unmute and introduce yourself.
Good evening, Chairman Landon and fellow commissioners or senators down there. I do appreciate this opportunity. I've been watching this and I've heard a lot of different things tonight. When it comes to concealed carry, I have been carrying concealed for a lot of years. And one of the things that makes that an advantage is that when the bad guy goes into an area, they don't know who they need to worry about. So it's important, and it really helps out as far as security overall. It's not just for the people that are there, but if you've been trained and understand what the ramifications are for utilizing a gun, which most of us do that have concealed carry permits, it makes all the difference in the world. I heard testimony tonight about different things and people being concerned about that and open carry. I personally don't ever open carry unless I'm hunting because I don't want anyone else to be concerned about what I'm doing. The whole idea of having a concealed gun, firearm, is to make sure that you have the element of surprise on your side in case you have to utilize that. For that reason, I believe that we should pass this. And just for past information, I've got 7 years of law enforcement. I was also fire chief in Mills. I've got almost 40 years of safety, environmental safety and compliance work. So safety is not a new issue to me. I'm also a chief range safety officer, and I am a firearms instructor. And that's one of the first things I always teach people is to make sure that you understand what the laws are. Understand that you need to make sure that what you're doing is right. You know, hearing about the different number of children that have been injured, the majority of the kids that are injured in this country are in Chicago or in the inner cities, and they're shot by fellow children or gang members that don't legally have firearms. That's where the biggest problem is. You look at the Boulder shooting that happened down there, that individual went around to 9 different theaters to find the one that didn't allow concealed carries in there. They pick soft targets. By allowing people to carry in these locations, the bad guys, they're no longer a soft target because they don't know who has firearms in there. They aren't marked. It's not like having police officers or security officers in there that they can positively identify. With that, I'll take any questions.
Commissioner North, thank you. Appreciate it. Any questions for Mr. North? Okay, let's go to Andy Pelosi this evening. I believe Andy might be our last one to testify tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chairman Landon and members of the committee. I really appreciate this opportunity to zoom in, and I'll be extremely brief. I think the speakers have hit all the key points. I want to just focus primarily on the impacts of HB 125, which my organization, the Campaign to Keep Guns Off Campus, strongly opposes. We've worked on this issue for over 16 years around the country, including in Wyoming in prior years. And again, I want to just focus on the unintended consequences. And before I do that, though, just very quickly, I want to make sure that we're clear that the Gun-Free School Zone Act does not apply to college campuses. It was passed in 1990. It only applies to K through 12 public, private, and parochial schools. It does not apply to college campuses whatsoever, even though college campuses do receive federal funding. So I think we need to be clear on that. The other point that I want to quickly make, if I could, is Mr. Cole from National Shooting Sports Foundation said earlier that there haven't been any incidents on campuses where guns on campus is allowed. And that's just unfortunate. That's untrue. I did send to the committee, hopefully you received it, 2 documents. One was a list of documented incidents, 35, that have happened on college campuses where guns are allowed. So hopefully you've got to see that that document. If it did not reach you, I can resend it to you. So 35 incidents, and that is only really scratching the surface. We're still doing open records requests to look for more incidents. The other point I wanted to quickly make, if I could, was that you had at least 3 incidents, Umpqua Community College in Oregon, Columbine, and Marjory Stoneman Douglas, where armed guards were there, and they were defeated. At Marjory Stoneman Douglas, actually, there were school resource officers inside the building also. So I just want to make sure we were clear there. Just in terms of the unintended consequences with this bill, again, talking about college campuses, the students made some very good points. The president from Sheridan Community College also made some very good points. But the other areas that would come into play here, because the bill is silent, the bill just talks about, oh, you can carry on a college campus, speaking engagements, dining halls, auditoriums, locker rooms, athletic workout facilities, disciplinary hearings. You had an incident in Alabama several years ago at a faculty hearing where a person brought a gun, killed 2 faculty members. These are different places that would be at risk if you were to allow this bill to go forward. So I want to make sure that the committee thinks about really the full range of consequences that could come into play here. Also, in terms of open carry, there is no Wyoming statute right now that prohibits a person with a concealed weapons permit from openly carrying a firearm. I want to be clear about that also. So that's something to really consider. Again, I know it's late in the evening. Really appreciate you letting me testify by Zoom. I hope that the committee votes no on HB 125. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pelosi. Appreciate you being here tonight. And I appreciate the passion from everyone tonight. Thank you. And thanks for the civility, the way you presented the information and the way you've handled yourself tonight. My kudos. Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you as the two sponsors of the bill to come forward and take us home on this bill, and then I'm going to close public comment. So try to be as brief as you can and bring us home. Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. And I just want to say also, if you don't mind, I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. These are the conversations we need to have, and I appreciate that. I know there are a lot of emotions around it, and I do appreciate everyone that's spent their evening here and brought their concerns and comments. A couple, I think we could probably continue to beat on it, and at the end of the day, it comes back to a conversation of what we feel is the right policy or decision. But I also go back to the fact that I believe there's also a right that is a conversation here. We've heard a lot about local control. It's got to be local control. At the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, do we believe that the right to bear arms that shall not be infringed upon, is this an infringement? And I think that's the policy that I would reach out and ask. And if you don't mind, there is I've got a letter from the University of Wyoming students at Turning Point. It's very short, just 2 paragraphs, if you don't mind me reading that. Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Okay. On behalf of concerned students at the University of Wyoming, Gabe Saint, Nick Bergani, Noah Scott, Owen Fink, Lucy Holt, Brandon Veach, Zoe Bertelli, Jane Bellis, Robert Fute, Eric Swingley, Kyle O'Brien, and Reese Robertson. We pledge our support to House Bill 125, which eliminates gun-free zones in the state of Wyoming. We have always held that the Second Amendment and self-defense are inalienable rights given to us by God, which we must exercise in order to defend and preserve innocent human life. For years, the anti-gun lobby has made it their ultimate goal to make it as hard as possible for law-abiding citizens to defend themselves. The easiest way they've done this is to help establish gun-free zones in various areas among various states. Doing this with regards to government and educational institutions leaves thousands of innocent students and citizens vulnerable to violent attacks from criminals. Gun-free zones are antithetical to our founding principles and are inconsistent with the history and tradition of the United States. That's why we urge every voting member of this body to pass House Bill 125 so that we may fully exercise our Second Amendment rights. And I'll just say, if all we have is signs protecting us and our kids, I don't believe that's protection, and I believe this is a way we can bring that across the board and make that reality. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Any questions? Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I really want to nail down this open carry issue. And I don't want this to be about open carry at all under any circumstance. Let's not have that conversation if you don't mind. And I've been reached out to someone that suggests that on page 7, when we take 68401 on line 7, that goes on down to 21.3.132, that might have taken away the ability of, for example, the university to prohibit open carry. And I'm just asking the question, I definitely don't want this to allow for any form of open carry. We can do that, we can have that debate elsewhere. So help me with that. And then there was the issue a little earlier about whether colleges and universities were caught up in the open carry prohibition. And so there's definitely a divergence about that. So, we could say, you could add language to this that says, notwithstanding any other aspect of law, open carry is not permitted in schools, universities, campuses. We could say something like that, but I'm just reaching out.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Case. So there is definitely multiple fields of thought here. We have a legal statement from the attorneys at GOA that says it is covered. This is not legal to open carry on K through 12 campuses or universities. Now, we've also heard other testimony that isn't the case. So at that point, I definitely leave it to your discretion if it is time to have that conversation. Now, what I will say is this, we don't need open carry on the campus. I believe that is something that we could definitely create that would create a problem and create a situation. So, but I mean, I'm also gonna say on the flip side, we have open carry currently on campus if you're taking that firearm from the gun safe to your pickup truck. So that's already happening. So we have to be careful that we don't at the same time take that law-abiding student that wants to go out and shoot his competition trap or go out and hunt, that they can't carry that firearm. And obviously it should be in a case, but I mean, but do you see what I'm saying? We also have to be careful of that, and I don't want to create an issue there, so.
Senator.
Mr. Chairman, I'd point the committee's attention to page 3, line 14, where there is some language in there, and maybe the attorneys can argue about it, but there's a clear, nothing in the section shall be construed to prohibit a government entity from prohibiting the open carry.
Where's that? I'm sorry.
Page 3, line 14. So that, in my mind, a simple reading of it would, that is a very clear statement. Now, if we need to strengthen it, that's a different question, I guess, but I think it is covered in the bill based off my reading.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Case.
can I just have a second? So there was a lady that made a point earlier that section just seems to talk about meetings and not really college campuses, and it's not very broad. It seems to just talk about meetings. So you see my point, or her point on that.
Right.
Senator.
And Mr. Chairman, as I said, if there's a desire to, strengthen that, that'd be a place to do it. So.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks. Appreciate it. I'm going to close public testimony. Committee, we have a bill in front of us. What is your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Senator Cooper moved House Bill 125. Discussion. Any discussion?
Chairman.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've done a lot of research on this in the last few days and a lot of thought. I've talked to a lot of people. A couple of the people I talked to were some students at the university, some of my homegrown lobbyists, if you will. And one of them's a young lady about 21, 22 years old, and she walks home from the university every night, or 4 or 5 blocks, in an area that's very poorly lit. She would really appreciate having some kind of self-defense. But because she goes to school on the university, she cannot carry her concealed weapon, and she does have a permit. So while we're protecting some, we don't protect others. 21-3-132, I'm really disappointed that more districts across the state didn't take advantage of this. I think had they, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. One of my school districts, actually the one that I live in, utilizes 21-3-132, and I had a good conversation with our superintendent the other day. She had some questions about the employee part of it, and I think the bill covered her questions. We don't have a gun-free zone sign in front of our school. We got a drug-free zone sign. We got a tobacco-free zone sign, and they may or may not work. But we have a sign on the door that says, "Notice, some members of this staff may be armed to protect our students." I think that's one hell of a deterrent. We've got a lot of conversation about people walking into schools now that with the purpose of shooting that wouldn't have been there before. I think when these shooters walk into a school, they've already realized that they're probably not going to walk out of that school. They're either going to be terminated or they're going to be in prison for the rest of their life. They don't care about that sign up front. No matter where this bill goes, whether it passes out of this committee or not, or passes the floor, I think this is a subject that needs to come back to the interim. I think I understand why it was brought here short notice, but this is a bill of so much importance for public safety, but also for our Second Amendment rights that I care so much about. I think this bill needs to come back, this subject needs to come back to the interim to see if we can make it even a better bill, or we can provide more safety for our students, one way or the other. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna have to be in support of this bill.
Okay. Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, I have amendments. And the gist of the amendments, I'd sort of like the policies with respect to the lawfulness of concealed carry to be kind of the same with respect to government entities and schools and colleges, with the exception that I would like to have the Board of Trustees or the school district be able to approve within the school district or the college. I'd like to prohibit open carry and give, and I would, and you know, so I have amendments down this line. They will take time, and if, you know, if the committee is not going to support this bill, but I think it needs some amendments. But I'm not going to pass it out of here without these amendments. So it's kind of, I'm putting it in your court. If people don't want to work it and hear the amendments and just don't want to, you know, we could do a straw poll, whatever you want, but I need the amendments.
Well, Senator Case, what you've touched on is where I'm really struggling with this bill. I don't know what it does to our university. I don't know what it means for our colleges. Having spent 31 years at the college in various capacities up in the center part of the state, I've run into a lot of things. I've seen a lot of students, and I'm concerned about residence halls, for example. To get directly to where you're going, Senator Case, I would be interested in the amendments. If they can, that might help me to get somewhere with this bill. But right now, it just feels like we're chasing a covey of quails. We're just trying to shoot some quail and hitting this on as it goes, and that bothers me a little bit. Here we are, you know, at such a late hour in a budget session, an individual bill, folks. That happens very seldom here on something this monumental. I mean, I'm the only person in this room that's been through a school shooting. I was on campus.
I remember it.
A couple of 100 yards away when a shooter came on that campus and took out one of our instructors and then ultimately took out himself. And I can tell you, folks, it wouldn't have mattered if I'd have had my pistol there. I wouldn't have had the time. It was a done deal about that fast. Nobody's ever come to me who advocates for these bills and never sat down and talked to me about that day or what happened or how it happened or what my observations are. I just find that interesting. I'm the only one that's been through one. I don't know if this makes a difference, but we have to make sure that we know what we're doing with respect to colleges like that, folks. We can't just fire this on the way by, you know. If we think we can fix this thing, I'd be glad to consider it.
I'll give you 5 minutes of what I'm proposing, okay? If you want. But we should let Senator
Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm where you are. I looked at this bill. I looked at all the amendments. It is concerning to have that many amendments with a bill that, like I said, is in a budget session. It's an important bill. The last time we had a bill like this, I voted for it. And things have changed, I think, since then. Like I said before, we put hundreds of thousands of dollars into school security. And we've made our schools really a lot more secure. My district is one of those 4 that opted to pass legislation to allow our teachers to be armed. I don't know how many are or how many took advantage of it. I think there were some, but I don't know. But I certainly felt a little more comfortable with that, knowing that those teachers that did choose to do that have at least 24 hours of, I think it's 16 hours of firearms training, maybe 8 hours in the classroom. I can't remember exactly. What concerns me is I'm very much like the good senator here. I still don't know, even if teachers were armed, if they could stop someone that really has an intent, even with their security and all of that. But I'm the same way. If this is to go forward, and I'm kind of on the fence really with which way to go, I would have to have an amendment to feel more comfortable about it. And I just think that it's maybe not ready for prime time, but because of all the amendments and all of the issues that have been brought up. And I also lean towards towards local control. Again, where my district has chosen to go this route, and they feel good about it, and they went through quite a public process to have this happen. And I know other schools have done it. Is it still gonna make it perfect? Is it still gonna stop a shooter? I don't know. But I'm a little concerned with where we're at, so I don't even know if I can tell you how I'm gonna vote at this point in time.
Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I've heard clearly from my community, which is the university community, that they are not in support of this bill. And I've also heard from teachers who are very concerned about, they really want to teach. They really don't want to learn how to shoot a gun. They have no interest in that. So they've made it clear, don't vote for this bill. So I will be a no vote, Mr. Chairman, on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Another thought or two here. In one of my districts, they teach gun safety and marksmanship in the basement of the middle school. So what happens in my district, in my area of the state, I'm gonna say if you walked out into the school parking lot tomorrow and checked pickups, you could probably find that most of these kids, maybe they're gonna shoot a coyote on the way home, or maybe they stopped on the way to town to shoot some prairie dogs. And I'm pretty sure that you're gonna find a weapon in a large quantity of those vehicles, even though, well, they're not allowed to bring it into school, period. So with that said,
That sounds like the good old days, by the way.
It is.
When we
in some-
had our
Thank
rifles
you.
in the back window.
In some areas of the state, this might make sense, but in my area of the state and with my constituents, maybe we're a bunch of rednecks up there, but this bill supports my constituents. Thank you.
Senator Case, what are you thinking, and what, in your opinion, what might help this bill?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll just tell you the amendments, so everybody has them. So, page 2, lines 7 through 9, this is the government meetings and legislative meetings. There's two types of concealed carry here. There's the permitted concealed carry, including reciprocity, and there's also people that don't have a permit but otherwise uphold the law and are qualified. I'd like to get rid of and that's called constitutional carry. I'd like to get rid of constitutional carry. So it says persons lawfully carrying concealed weapons in Wyoming under WS 68104A, Romanet I, and Romanet 3, or Romanet 2 and Romanet 3, delete through 4, and then keep the language may carry a concealed weapon in the following places. Romanet I stands, Romanet 2 stands. And since we changed that to be essentially almost the language under 16 through 18, which does not include reciprocity, I might add, and we could decide whether to take that out, but I would delete lines 16, 17, and 18. I would renumber line 20 to Romanet 3, And there's a big change coming here. Start the sentence, with the approval of the governing body, comma, any public school, public college, or university athletic event taking place on public property that does not sell alcoholic beverages. And then, Mr. Chairman, on page 3, Romanet 2 becomes Romanet 4, Romanet 3 becomes Romanet 5. We come down into the next section. Nothing in this subsection shall be construed to, go right down to lines 14 through 16, prohibit a government entity from prohibiting the open carry, comma, display or wearing of a firearm into a meeting of that government entity, comma, primary or secondary school or college campus. And then that would be the colon. Continuing on to page 4, we might as well get line 11. The law enforcement gentleman mentioned that 2 doesn't fit very well, and that should be changed to 4. I think that works.
Help me on page 4 again.
Page 4, line 11.
Line 11.
Another person to lawfully carrying. So the sentence would read, any person who knowingly prohibits entry to another person for lawfully carrying a concealed weapon, blah, 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 blah. Then, they're not gonna like this one either. It's page 19, or line 19, part F. The Board of Trustees in each school district may adopt rules and regulations to strike the word govern, or strike the word employees. And it would say to govern lawful carrying of concealed weapons in Wyoming under WS 68104 on or in any property or facility owned or leased by the school district, period. And we would delete the next sentence. It says any rules and regulations adopted under this subsection shall only apply to persons who are employees as defined by subsection G of this section. That would be deleted. Then we'd pick up the language that says the rules under this subsection shall, and it goes on through. Line 6, or page 6. That's just the student exception. I don't think I have to mess with that, but I don't think we need, on bottom of page 6, line 22, I don't think you want through Romanet 4, because that wouldn't be legal. So it'd be Romanet 2 and 3. Remember, 4 is constitutional carry. 3 is reciprocal. They don't have a permit from Wyoming, but they got it from somewhere else. We may not like that, but that's what 3 is, and we could decide whether to do that or not. Finally, I don't have anything else. That's it. The rest are just notes. Sorry. So that's what I would do. It changes the tenor of the bill a lot. It does give if we were to adopt it, it would give the proponents of the original bill an opportunity to divide the amendment on the floor in the Senate. We could take it upstairs, or you could just say, that's too much work, let's push it to interim, whatever. But I would offer that amendment if you want to work the bill.
Well, Senator Case, thank you. I mean, that helps me a great deal. I mean, if we, the permission and approval that we're giving bottom page 2 to any public school, any public college, that takes me a long ways. And believe me, I'm pretty proud of my rating. I'm a Second Amendment guy, just like all the rest of our Wyoming people are. And I would love to be able to support a bill that takes care of that Second Amendment right. But if we don't do something like this, I can't get there. So committee discussion on the proposed amendment. Did everybody follow what Senator Case was doing? Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I was just going to ask again if he could reiterate what he's got done on page 2. I lost you on page 2. So if you
Senator
could just
Case,
go over
could you
that
walk
again.
us through page 2 again?
And I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman, if I could have a slight preference. We need to decide whether we want to include the reciprocal permit holders, people that would have a permit from another state that come to Wyoming, because that is Romanet 3. And you will note that they carefully constructed the bill so that that is not included in lines 16 through 18, which I'm proposing to remove, but it would be included in lines 7 through 9. The first part, 7 through 9, is governmental entity in the legislature. 16, 17, and 18 is schools. So it's kind of a fork in the road there, and I'm happy either way. At a minimum, Romanet 2 is a permit issued by the state of Wyoming. That's what that is. So anyway, go over that again. Do I have permission to land? Okay, page 2, line 8. Strike the words through 4. And this is a decision point. We could either leave it at just 2 or say 2 and 3, Romanet 3. Lines 16, 17, and 18, remove that completely. And on line 20, we're going to do some renumbering, but the first part of that line will start with the approval of the governing body, comma, any public school, public college, or university athletic event taking place on public property that does not sell alcoholic beverages. Everything else is renumbering till we get to page 3, lines 14, 15, and 16. Romanet 3 here, which would be prohibit a government entity from prohibiting the open carry. It's a double negative there, prohibiting the prohibiting of, but display or wearing of a firearm into a meeting of that government entity, comma, school, primary or secondary school or college campus, comma. And then we go on. Page 4, we picked up the change from sheriffs and police about line 11, changing the word to after person to for. Then the big change, I think, comes in at line 19 on page 4. The Board of Trustees in each school district may adopt rules and regulations to govern lawful carrying of concealed weapons under WS 68104. It's not just employees, it's everybody. On or in any property or facility owned or leased by the school district, period. We take out the next section, and then I think that is it, actually.
Okay, senators, did everybody follow that? And Pierre, did you follow it? Go ahead. On page 6, line 20, line 22, we strike through 4.
That would match, Mr.
And insert and 3I.
Yeah, that would match. Yeah, I think that's appropriate. Thank you, Pierre, that's appropriate. And if we didn't want to go down the other states' permits, then we would not have the 3. But I agree, that's certainly friendly.
I don't mean to confuse, but on page 7, Senator Case, you asked a couple times for clarification on the open carry piece. Does that language do what it needs to do to prohibit?
Page 7, Mr. Chairman, the questions I was asking about were basically honing in on line 16, where there's a removal of one statute and putting in another one. 23-1302 is a game and fish statute. 21-3-132 is a school statute, but I think it's taken care of earlier. And what we did with this amendment, or what we could do with this amendment, is much more strict than the sponsors want. And I'm sure they'll oppose it. And if I were them, I would divide the amendment on the floor is what I would do. And, but that's the only way I can get this out of this committee right now.
Questions on the amendment, on the proposed amendment? Any questions? All in favor of Senator Case's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no.
No.
Okay, that amendment is passed, and Pierre, we will make sure that we go through that with Senator Case to make sure that, anything else on the bill committee? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment I was going to propose may have been taken care of with Senator Cases. I was going to propose on page 6, after line 13, that any person intending to carry a concealed weapon on or in any property or facility owned or leased by the school district shall notify the school administrator. And the reason I brought that forth is because those schools that have allowed teachers to be armed, they require their teachers to, or their superintendents to notify law enforcement agencies that have jurisdiction over that area of the names of those employees who receive permission to carry firearms. And I just thought it would only be fair if we did it both ways. But again, I don't know does that interfere with your?
Could I hear it again?
Can you
Sure.
read that again for
Sure.
us, Senator? Thanks.
This would be a new, probably I. Any person intending to carry a concealed weapon on or in any property or facility owned or leased by the school district shall notify the school administrator. And the reason I brought it really is just the fact that if, again, I'm thinking in terms of those districts that have already voted to approve their teachers to be armed. And I think if someone were to come in and they thought there was an active shooter somewhere, and a couple of teachers, administrator, whatever, that do have concealed carry, they see somebody walking in, they don't know if he's the shooter, they don't know what he's got up his sleeve. But if he's been, approved by the school administrator, then, possibly he's not going to get shot or somebody else. I don't know. That was the reason I brought that forth. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I think what line 20 would say is, with the approval of the governing body, you can bring in the concealed carry. Whether that's a blanket approval or an individual approval, I would suspect would be up to the governing body. But I don't necessarily oppose the amendment, but I think with the approval of means you can't. And I think with the approval of says, well, we're going to let our employees do it, but we're not going to let the public do it. Let me just be clear on that. Or we're going to let Joe do it, but we're not letting Sam do it. So, but that's my thinking. And if you want to do belt and suspenders, that's okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to withdraw that too. That's what I wanted to make sure is if you felt like your amendment covers that, I'm good with that as well.
Okay, that amendment has been withdrawn. Anything else on this bill, committee? Anything else? We have.
Pierre's got his hand up.
Before the meeting, I received this proposed amendment that is in your packet. I think the first page 4, line 11 would conflict with the amendment that Senator Case passed, but the remaining 2 amendments would still be an option.
Let's look at that.
Have you seen that, gentlemen? This came from our attorneys. Did somebody on the committee have this proposed
Just in the
amendment?
packet. It was just in the packet, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know where it came from.
I heard that, I don't remember. I think it's mostly just informing language for the most part.
Page 4, line
I think we took care of page 4, line 11.
Yes,
I
we
had
did.
just
Yes, we
forward.
did.
Oh, it's the same language. I mean, Mr. Chairman, if I might explain, page 4, line 11, that would work as well. Any person who knowingly prohibits entry into another
Who is
person
instead of for?
who is lawfully carrying instead of for. I agree with that.
Okay, then page 5, line 18. After non-lethal.
Trying to get there.
Training. And insert methods, non-lethal methods instead of training. And then 6.
I think they're saying, Mr. Chairman, I think this would be friendly. It says 8 hours of scenario-based training using non-lethal training. Well, nobody thinks the training is going to be lethal. They're talking about the methods. And that's what they're trying to say. That'd be tough training if it was lethal training, I'd say. 8 hours of scenario-based training using non-lethal methods. We ought to be able to do that on line 18.
So I would entertain if someone would like to move this amendment from line 4 through line 8. Senator Schuler has moved it, so on page 5, you just outlined Senator Case. I think that language is good.
Yeah.
If you go over onto page 6, subsection, insert paragraph, I think that's self-explanatory.
That's why they get the big bucks, Mr. Chairman. That's just conforming.
A little cleanup.
And sometimes that's really important, because if you refer back to the wrong thing.
That's correct.
So I think that's good.
Okay, all in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Okay, that amendment has passed. Pierre, thank you very much for that reminder. Okay, anything else on the bill? Any further comments on the bill tonight? Okay, one more time, I want to thank everyone for being here this late. It's not ideal, but lots of times the budget sessions are not ideal. So, thank you, everyone. Are you ready for roll call?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, did we pass those amendments?
We did. The amendment has passed, and we're back on the bill. And final comments or any comments? No? Dear, please take roll on House Bill 125.
Senator Case,
Aye.
Senator Cooper,
Aye.
Senator Furphy,
No.
Senator Schuler,
No.
Chairman Landon.
No.
You made me do all that work.
3 noes, 2 ayes.
Mr. Chairman,
That was good work, Bill. Yes.
I think, I know everybody's in a big hurry to get home, but I think we really need to,
Hang on just a minute, everyone.
we
Please.
really need to bring this bill forward on the interim. And if there are concerns, I think this bill is so important to my constituents and to a lot of other folks in this room on both sides of this issue. This bill has to be in the interim. I can't see any way we can walk away from it.
I think that would be a good consideration, and thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you.